A lone rider thunders down a stone-paved road, sweat and dust clinging to his tunic. He carries a message that could alter the fate of an empire, a single thread in a vast, invisible web of information. This was the Roman Courier Network, the Cursus Publicus, an engineering marvel that bound ancient Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East together with the speed of a galloping horse. For centuries, its true scale was a mystery, lost to time and crumbling ruins. But now, cutting-edge technology is illuminating this ancient system, allowing us to map its entirety for the first time. By the end of this exploration, you will see the Roman Empire not just as a collection of conquests, but as a living, breathing organism connected by information highways. We will uncover how messages traveled faster than anyone thought possible, and what secrets are still hidden in the soil, waiting to be decoded. What does it truly take to hold an empire together with nothing but words on a scroll, and the will to deliver them? That rider was not simply carrying a letter. He was carrying an empire's pulse. Think for a moment about the sheer scale of the world he was connecting. From the damp mists of northern Britain to the sun-baked ports of Egypt, the Roman Empire sprawled across millions of square miles, encompassing countless cultures and languages. Governing such a colossal territory was the ultimate logistical nightmare. How does an emperor in Rome know if a rebellion is brewing in Syria, or if a legion on the Rhine River needs reinforcements, or if the grain shipments from North Africa are running on schedule? The answer is, without a constant and reliable flow of information, he simply does not. This is why the courier network was not a luxury. It was the central nervous system of the entire state, a biological necessity for survival. Every official message was like an electrical impulse racing along a nerve. A delayed military order could mean the loss of a province. A slow tax report could bankrupt a region. A misplaced census document could throw the entire system of administration into chaos. The empire's expansion and its very stability depended on moving information faster than trouble could spread. It was a race against time, distance, and uncertainty, run on thousands of miles of stone-paved roads. So the next time you see a map of the Roman Empire, do not just see borders and cities. See the invisible lines of communication humming with activity, carrying the words that built the ancient world and held it together against all odds. Before the empire had its nervous system, the Roman Republic relied on a chaotic patchwork of information. Messages moved at the whims of private couriers, men for hire whose loyalty could be bought, or whose journey could be cut short by bandits. Official dispatches might hitch a risky ride with a merchant caravan, their delivery subject to the caravan's slow, meandering route and commercial priorities. For urgent military alerts, signal fires could flash a simple prearranged code from hilltop to hilltop. But they could not convey the complexity of a political report or the details of a supply request. They could only scream danger without any of the necessary context. Imagine a governor in a distant province needing to inform the Senate of a border dispute. He would entrust a vital scroll to a lone rider, who would then face weeks of treacherous travel, with no guarantee of safe passage, or even that the message would arrive at all. This system was fraught with delays, vulnerabilities, and outright failures. It was a world where information traveled by chance, not by design. A growing city-state could tolerate such unpredictability, but an expanding republic on the verge of becoming a world power could not. The old methods were like trying to manage a modern corporation using only handwritten notes passed between strangers. The lack of a reliable, state-controlled communication network was a critical weakness. one that would soon be exposed by the sheer weight of imperial ambition. The old, fractured system could not last. Into this void of uncertainty stepped the first Roman emperor, Augustus. He understood that to rule an empire, you must first command its flow of information. Around 20 years before the Common Era, he did something no one had ever done before. He transformed the chaotic mess of private messengers into a single state-controlled machine, the Cursus Publicus. This was not merely an administrative upgrade. It was a political and strategic masterstroke, a conscious act of weaving the far-flung provinces into one unified fabric. Augustus realized that a rebellion in Gaul or a grain shortage in Egypt was not just a local problem. It was a threat to the stability of Rome itself, and that threat could only be countered with speed and certainty. The Cursus Publicus became his tool for imposing that order. By controlling the messengers, he controlled the narrative. He could receive intelligence from his governors long before rumors could fester and spread. He could dispatch his orders with the full authority of the state, knowing they would arrive intact and on time. This new network was the ultimate instrument of centralized power. It meant that the will of a single man in Rome could now be felt almost instantly in a fortress 1,000 miles away. Think of the immense psychological impact this must have had across the empire. A local official in a distant town would see these imperial couriers thundering past, a constant visible reminder that Rome was always watching, always connected, and always in charge. The roads were no longer just paths for trade and legions. They became the empire's information highways, and Augustus held the map. But how do you build a system fast and reliable enough to tame an entire continent? The answer lies in the ruthless, brilliant logistics that powered the entire operation. Those imperial couriers did not ride across open fields. They traveled on the most sophisticated and enduring infrastructure the ancient world had ever seen, the famous Roman roads. These were not mere dirt paths. They were the engineered skeleton upon which the entire courier network was built, designed with one overriding purpose: speed and reliability. The most legendary of them all was the Via Appia, the Appian Way. Begun in the early days of the Republic, it stretched from Rome deep into southern Italy, an arrow-straight line of massive stone blocks. Its famous durability was not for show. That solid, level surface allowed messengers and legions to move at a consistent, punishing pace, regardless of the weather. A muddy trail would slow a horse to a walk, but the paved Appian Way allowed for a continuous, ground-eating trot or canter. Think of it as the ancient equivalent of a modern superhighway, a multi-lane express route built for high-volume, high-speed traffic. Further north, the Via Appia traced the western coastline, connecting Rome to vital ports like Pisa, and eventually extending into Gaul. This was the empire's maritime artery on land, ensuring that messages between the capital and its naval stations never had to detour inland. And then there was the Via Egnatia, a true marvel of long-distance engineering. Starting on the Adriatic coast, it cut straight across the Balkan Peninsula, linking the western half of the empire to the east, all the way to Byzantium, the city that would later become Constantinople. This road was the essential land bridge, the overland fiber optic cable that connected the Latin-speaking world with the Greek-speaking one. The sheer ambition of its construction is staggering. To build a road that's straight and that durable across such varied and mountainous terrain required a level of surveyors' skill and labor investment that was simply unprecedented. Why were they so straight? It was a matter of brutal efficiency. A winding road adds precious miles and hours to a journey. For a courier carrying a time-sensitive dispatch, every extra mile could be the difference between success and failure. The Romans understood that the shortest path between 2 points is a straight line, and they carved those lines across continents with unflinching determination. These roads were the physical manifestation of Roman control, a statement etched permanently into the earth itself, that distance would no longer be an obstacle to power. But a perfect road is useless without a place to stop, to rest, and to exchange a tired horse for a fresh one. This is where the true genius of the system revealed itself in a chain of way stations that turned a long, impossible journey into a series of short, manageable sprints. That chain of way stations transformed a single, exhausting marathon into a relay race of incredible efficiency. Scattered along the great roads at intervals of roughly 6 to 8 miles were the change stations, known as mutations. Think of these as the ancient world's pit stops, small and purely functional posts where a weary, sweating horse could be swapped for a fresh, rested one in a matter of minutes. The courier himself would not even dismount. He would simply transfer his precious saddlebags to a new animal and thunder off down the road, barely breaking stride. This simple act of changing horses was the secret to maintaining a blistering pace over hundreds of miles. But a man cannot run on horseback forever. After every 3 or 4 of these horse changes, roughly every 25 to 30 miles, the courier would reach a much larger complex called a mansio. This was not just a stable. It was a full service inn, a government-sanctioned rest stop designed for the human element of the system. Here, the messenger could finally dismount, eat a hot meal, get a few hours of sleep in a secure room, and tend to his own needs before setting out again at first light. These mansions were fortified and staffed by official personnel, ensuring the safety and secrecy of both the courier and his messages. They were the vital nodes in the network, the places where the human body, the most fragile component in the entire machine, was refueled and repaired. And guiding the entire journey were the silent sentinels of the Roman road, the milestones. These stone pillars, standing at every Roman mile, did more than just mark distance. They were the empire's odometers. A courier could glance at one and know exactly how far he was from the next mutations or mansio, allowing him to pace himself and manage his energy. For the officials who managed the system, these milestones provided a precise way to calculate travel times and allocate resources. They turned the vast, intimidating landscape of the empire into a measured, manageable grid. Every journey became a series of known quantities, a predictable sequence of horse changes and rest stops, all measured out in stone. This intricate anatomy of road, milestone, change station, and inn created a rhythm of travel that was both relentless and sustainable, a mechanical pulse beating along the veins of the empire. Every rider on those imperial roads carried his most vital piece of equipment, and it was not his sword. It was a small, sealed bronze tablet called a diploma. This was the official imperial passport, the golden ticket that granted access to the entire courier network. Without this document, a man on horseback was just a traveler. With it, he became an extension of the emperor's own will, a state official on urgent business. The diploma was not issued lightly. Only the highest authorities could grant one, typically the emperor himself, a provincial governor, or a senior military commander. It was a tool of immense privilege and immense trust. This small bronze plate authorized the bearer to demand a fresh horse at any mutations, to claim food and lodging at any mansio, and to command right of way on the busiest stretches of road. Imagine the power it represented. A low-ranking soldier, carrying a sealed dispatch and his diploma, could walk into a way station and order around the local officials, knowing the full weight of the empire backed his request. But with that power came extreme risk and severe regulation. The penalty for forging a diploma or using the system without authorization was death. The Romans understood that the security of their information depended entirely on the integrity of the system's users. If just anyone could commandeer a fresh horse and claim imperial priority, the entire network would descend into chaos, its speed and reliability shattered by fraud. So the diploma was more than a travel pass. It was a cryptographic key, a piece of trusted hardware that verified the user's identity and mission. It turned the public roads into a private, secure channel for the state. This bureaucratic control was the final, crucial layer that made the Cursus Publicus not just a transportation system, but a closed, high-security network. The empire had built the hardware of stone and horse, and the diploma was the unbreakable software that made it all run. The men who held these bronze passports were not senators or generals. They were the human engines of the empire, a corps of riders and cart drivers drawn from the ranks of slaves, freedmen, and low-ranking soldiers. Their lives were a testament to pure endurance. Imagine the physical toll of spending dawn till dusk in the saddle, day after day, in every conceivable weather. Their muscles would be hardened from the constant jolting, their hands calloused from the reins, their skin weathered by sun, rain, and biting wind. This was not a job for the frail. It demanded a level of fitness and resilience that few of us can comprehend today. The danger was a constant companion. While the main roads were patrolled, remote stretches were the perfect hunting grounds for bandits who knew a courier's saddlebags might contain something valuable, or that his horse was worth a fortune. An ambush around a wooded bend could mean a swift and anonymous death, your body and message lost to the wilderness. Beyond human threats, the elements themselves were a relentless enemy. A sudden storm could turn a mountain pass into a death trap of mudslides or flash floods. A fever caught from a chill could spell the end just as surely as a bandit's blade. There were no heroes' welcomes for these men. Their success was measured in silence, in the uneventful delivery of a scroll. A governor would break the seal and read the contents, never knowing the name of the man who nearly broke his body to bring it. They were the anonymous cogs in a magnificent machine, their personal stories sacrificed to the greater need for speed. What kind of person signs up for such a life? For a slave, it offered a sliver of mobility and purpose, far from the confines of a farm or mine. For a soldier, it was a duty that carried the weight of the empire on his shoulders. They were selected for their loyalty, their physical strength, and their intimate knowledge of the roads. They had to be more than just messengers. They were navigators, horsemen, and survivalists, all rolled into one. Every successful delivery was a small victory against the vast, crushing distance that threatened to pull the empire apart. Speed was the ultimate currency, and the empire designed specific vehicles to spend it wisely. For the most urgent messages, the kind that could start or stop a war, nothing surpassed the Viridis. This was a fast, light horse, bred and trained for a single purpose, pure velocity. A lone rider on a Viridis was the Empire's express delivery service. Unencumbered by heavy gear or a passenger, this horse and rider could maintain a punishing gallop between change stations, covering astonishing distances in a single day. The choice of this mount signaled the highest priority, a dispatch that was literally life or death. Imagine the sight of such a rider, his tunic plastered to his chest with sweat, his horse's coat lathered, thundering past a slower-moving ox cart without a second glance. He was a blur of focused intent, a living arrow shot down the straight line of a Roman road. But not every item traveling the Cursus Publicus was a single scroll. Sometimes the empire needed to move people, or official funds, or bulky administrative records. For these missions, the system provided the Reda, a much larger, enclosed carriage. This was the heavy logistics vehicle of its day. A redder was sturdy and spacious, capable of carrying several officials or a significant load of cargo. Its solid wooden wheels and reinforced axle were built to handle the relentless pounding of stone-paved roads for hundreds of miles. While it could not match the blistering pace of a Veredus, its speed was still impressive because it benefited from the same relay system. The redder's team of horses would be swapped out at every mutations, ensuring that even this heavier vehicle maintained a steady, ground-consuming trot that would leave any ordinary traveler in the dust. The choice between a Veredus and a redder was a calculated decision of state. It was a matter of matching the vehicle to the value and volume of the information. A secret military order demanded the speed and discretion of a single rider. The travel of a tax collector with his ledgers and coin, however, required the security and capacity of a carriage. This logistical nuance reveals a sophisticated understanding of information itself. The Romans knew that words had different weights and different urgencies, and they built a transportation network flexible enough to handle them all. Every clatter of hooves and every rumble of carriage wheels was a testament to this careful calibration, a symphony of motion composed for the singular purpose of holding a continent together. The relentless rhythm of the relay was the true engine of Roman speed. A single message could fly from one end of the empire to the other without a single man or horse completing the entire journey. This was the system's masterstroke. At each change station, a fresh rider stood ready, his mount stamping with impatience. The incoming courier would simply hand over his sealed saddlebags, and the new man would spring into the saddle and charge down the road. The message itself became the baton in a continuous, high-stakes race. This constant rotation of fresh legs and lungs pushed the system to its astonishing daily range of 50 to 80 miles. To grasp that speed, consider a journey from Rome to the English Channel, a distance of over 1,000 miles. A private traveler with his own horse and the need for long rests might take 2 months. An imperial courier, powered by the relay, could cover the same ground in just over 3 weeks. It was a velocity that defied the ancient world's understanding of distance, collapsing the empire into a manageable size. We can see a direct echo of this principle in our own time. A modern express delivery truck does not have one driver who drives from a warehouse to your door non-stop. The package is transferred between hubs, moving from one fresh driver to the next, each taking a leg of the journey. The Roman relay was the ancient blueprint for this very same logistical genius, a system built not on the stamina of a single component, but on the flawless coordination of many. It was a symphony of motion where the melody never paused. Only the instruments changed, ensuring the empire's song was heard everywhere at once. The relentless pace of the courier relay depended entirely on the ground beneath its hooves, on the physical stations that made the impossible journey routine. For centuries, the locations of these way stations were little more than educated guesses, their outlines blurred by time and soil. But archaeology is now pulling them back into the light, one stone foundation at a time. The key to digitally reconstructing this ancient network lies in the precise, almost mathematical spacing of these ruins. Surveyors walking the old Roman roadbeds, often using nothing more than field walking and aerial photography, began to notice a pattern. At intervals of roughly 6 to 8 Roman miles, they would find the remains of small, functional buildings. These were the mutations, the horse change stations. Their foundations are typically simple, featuring a central courtyard surrounded by stables, a smithy for emergency shoeing, and a small residence for the stable master. There is no grandeur here, only pure, brutal efficiency. The discovery of a single mutatio is interesting. but it is the discovery of a chain of them that unlocks the map. When archaeologists plot these sites on a modern map, they fall into a near-perfect rhythm along the known Roman roads, like a string of beads placed at precise intervals. This regular spacing is the first major clue, confirming the historical texts that describe the system's logistics. It proves the network was not a loose collection of stops, but a meticulously planned and measured infrastructure. Following this rhythm leads to the larger complexes, the mansions, appearing every 25 to 30 miles. Unearthing a mansio is a much richer find. These were not just inns, they were fortified government compounds. Excavations reveal the foundations of a central courtyard, a bathhouse for the travelers, a temple, barracks for a small garrison, and even a prison cell for holding anyone who threatened the couriers or their cargo. The artifacts found here tell a human story. Fragments of pottery from distant provinces, coins lost by tired officials, and animal bones from the kitchens that fed them. Each discovered mansio is not just a dot on a map. It is a restored heartbeat in the system, a place where we can almost hear the clamor of arrival and the quiet exhaustion of men catching a few hours of sleep. By digitally connecting these rediscovered points, a ghostly web begins to materialize on a screen. The lines are the roads, and the dots are the mutations and mansions. This is how we are mapping the Cursus Publicus, not from a single ancient map, but from the scattered physical evidence of its operation. Each new archaeological find is another data point, another confirmed node that sharpens our picture of how the empire truly functioned. It transforms the concept of a courier network from a historical idea into a tangible, measurable reality. A machine whose gears and pulleys we can now see and count. This magnificent system did not run on goodwill. Its relentless speed came with an immense price tag, a financial burden that weighed most heavily on the very people it was built to control. The Cursus Publicus was not funded by a central treasury in Rome. Instead, the empire imposed its cost directly onto the provinces and local communities as a compulsory duty. This was not a tax you paid with coins. It was a tax you paid in horses, wagons, fodder, and labor. A local town near a major road would be legally obligated to maintain a specific number of horses and mules for the imperial service. Farmers along the route had to set aside portions of their harvest to provide hay and grain for the animals. The mansions and mutations required staff, from stable hands to cooks, all drawn from the local population with little or no choice in the matter. Imagine being a village leader. An imperial official arrives with a requisition order, demanding you provide 10 fresh horses and 50 bushels of barley by the next full moon. Your community's prosperity, even its survival, depends on its livestock and harvest, and now you must surrender a significant portion of it to feed a machine that serves a distant capital. This system, known as the munera, was a form of crushing administrative pressure. It ensured the network's operation was decentralized and, for Rome, remarkably cheap, but it planted seeds of deep resentment across the empire. The financial strain was only part of the problem. This local obligation created a perfect environment for corruption to flourish. A greedy official could easily demand more animals or supplies than were officially required, then sell the surplus for personal profit. A local magistrate, tasked with fulfilling the duty, might extort extra goods from his neighbors, pocketing the difference. There was often no one to appeal to, no higher authority that would side with a small community over a Roman administrator. The very infrastructure that bound the empire together became, for many, a symbol of exploitation. The constant sight of imperial couriers changing horses and demanding service was a daily reminder that their local resources were being siphoned away to maintain a power that felt increasingly alien. This paradox lay at the heart of the Roman system. The same communications network that created stability and unity for the empire also generated the friction and injustice that would, over centuries, help pull it apart. The speed of a message from Rome to Britain was a marvel of engineering, but it was paid for by the silent resentment of countless villages along the way. The saddlebags of a Roman courier held far more than military orders and census reports. This network was the empire's true circulatory system, pumping not just information but wealth, people, and power to every extremity. While the sealed scrolls were its primary cargo, the Cursus Publicus also bore the weight of the Roman economy itself. Imperial officials, from low-level tax collectors to provincial governors on tour, traveled in the sturdy Redder carriages. Their journeys were not leisurely sightseeing trips. They were official state business, and the relay system ensured that a governor could traverse his entire province with an efficiency that reinforced his authority. He could inspect fortifications, adjudicate disputes, and collect reports with a speed that kept local powers in check. The system also moved the lifeblood of the state, cold, hard cash. Tax revenues, collected as coin from cities and towns, were shipped in guarded convoys along these secure routes. A single carriage could carry the annual tribute of an entire region, its journey a nerve-wracking secret known only to a few, its safe arrival in Rome crucial for paying the legions and funding public works. But the cargo could turn from the mundane to the bizarre. The same network that delivered a governor's tax ledger might also be tasked with transporting a caged leopard from North Africa, or a consignment of exotic spices from the East. These were the luxuries demanded by the Roman elite, and the state's own courier system, with its speed and security, was the safest way to get them to the banquet tables of the powerful. How surreal it must have been for a stable master at a remote mansio to hear the snarl of a big cat from an official carriage, all while a weary messenger dismounted with his standard dispatch. This reveals the network's true purpose. It was not merely a mail service. It was a complete logistical pipeline for the Roman state, moving everything that gave the empire its substance, from the words that commanded it, to the coins that funded it, to the very symbols of its extravagant power. This magnificent communication web, so vital for unity, became its greatest weakness when the empire began to fracture. In times of peace, the Cursus Publicus was a symbol of control, but in times of crisis, it transformed into a glaring vulnerability. Its very speed and centralization made it an irresistible target for any enemy who understood that to cripple Rome, you first had to sever its nerves. During a barbarian invasion, the first strategic objective was often the road network itself. A migrating tribe like the Goths or Vandals did not need to defeat every Roman legion in open battle. They simply needed to disrupt the system that allowed those legions to coordinate. By burning a few key mansions, slaughtering the horses at mutations, or ambushing couriers on a remote mountain pass, an invading force could plunge an entire region into informational darkness. Imagine a Roman general on the Rhine frontier. He sends a frantic plea for reinforcements to a colleague 50 miles away, but the messenger is intercepted. The general waits, days turning into weeks, hearing only silence. He has no idea if his message was received, if help is coming, or if the empire behind him has simply ceased to exist. That single break in the chain could mean the loss of a province, as local commanders were left isolated, blind, and unable to support one another. The network designed to prevent panic was now the very instrument that created it. Civil wars exposed an even more insidious flaw. When rival emperors fought for the throne, the Cursus Publicus became a weapon turned inward. A usurper would immediately seize control of the way stations in the territories he occupied. using the empire's own system to spread his propaganda and coordinate his armies against the legitimate emperor in Rome. The same diplomas that once guaranteed loyalty to a single ruler were now issued by competing powers, creating a bizarre and deadly confusion across the network. A Mancio master would have to choose which emperor to obey, a decision that could mean reward or execution. This internal corruption of the system shattered the single unified narrative that Augustus had worked so hard to create. There was no longer one Rome speaking with one voice. There were many, and the constant, reliable hum of information degraded into a cacophony of conflicting orders and lies. As the 3rd and 4th centuries wore on, the system began to fray under the weight of endless crises. The funds and resources needed to maintain the roads and way stations were diverted to more immediate emergencies, like raising new armies or paying off invaders. Neglected roads became treacherous, and abandoned mutations were reclaimed by the forest. The empire's nervous system was suffering a slow, systemic failure. A message that once took 3 weeks from Rome to Britain might now take 2 months, if it arrived at all. This decaying infrastructure created a feedback loop of decline. Slower communication meant slower military response, which led to more territory lost, which in turn further degraded the roads and stations in those regions. The empire was quite literally losing touch with itself. The invisible threads that had once bound it together were snapping one by one, and with each snap, a piece of the ancient world faded into silence, waiting for a new map to be drawn. The crumbling of the Roman world did not erase its memory. Centuries after the last imperial courier rode the Via Appia, a different kind of map surfaced, a strange and beautiful artifact that seems to capture the empire not as a territory, but as a network. This is the Tabula Peutingeriana, the Peutinger table. It is a medieval copy, a long, narrow parchment scroll that feels more like an ancient schematic than a geographical guide. The world is stretched and flattened, with Italy at its heart and Britain nearly omitted, yet it pulses with the lifeblood of the Roman system. It is a map of connections, not of coastlines. Wriggling across the parchment are the great roads themselves, drawn like red and yellow veins. Along them, tiny symbols mark the very mansions and mutations archaeology is now rediscovering. Next to each stop, a small, precise notation gives the distance in Roman miles, the vital date a courier needed to pace his journey. The map is a stunning visualization of the Cursus Publicus in its prime, a diagram of pure movement. Yet its distortions are immediately obvious. Rivers bend at impossible angles, and the Mediterranean Sea is squashed into a thin blue ribbon. This was never meant to help a traveler navigate a mountain pass. Its purpose was conceptual. It showed a Roman official the entire empire's logistical skeleton at a glance, illustrating how to get from Londinium to Alexandria, not by following a realistic coastline, but by hopping from one known station to the next. It presents the world as Rome experienced it, a series of connected points of control. The distance between two cities was not measured in miles of wilderness, but in the number of stops and changes of horse required to bridge them. This remarkable document confirms what the physical evidence suggests, that the Romans thought in terms of routes and resources, seeing their dominion as a web of managed journeys. The Peutinger table is the closest we may ever come to seeing the empire through the eyes of the men who ran it. A ghostly administrative blueprint for the machine that held a continent together. The ghostly lines of the Peutinger table are no longer just ink on parchment. Today, we are giving them substance, using the eyes of machines to see what the Romans built and the earth has hidden. The primary tool in this modern rediscovery is LIDAR, a technology that uses laser pulses to strip away the forest canopy and even the topsoil itself. Mounted on aircraft, these lasers fire millions of invisible beams at the ground. By measuring how long each beam takes to bounce back, a computer can construct a stunningly precise, three-dimensional map of the bare Earth, revealing every subtle contour. From the air, a dense woodland looks impenetrable. But with LIDAR, the trees and undergrowth are digitally erased, and suddenly, the ghost of a Roman road appears as a faint, straight ridge cutting through the landscape. It is a road no one has walked for 1500 years, its paving stones long since looted. But its raised foundation, the agger, remains as a permanent scar on the land, visible only to lasers. This is how we find lost segments, especially in remote areas like the mountains of the Balkans or the moors of northern Britain, where the old routes were abandoned and forgotten. LIDAR does not just find the roads, it also pinpoints the ruins of the way stations. A mutatio, with its rectangular foundation and central courtyard, creates a distinct geometric signature in the laser data, a human-made shape that stands out sharply from the natural curves of the terrain. This allows archaeologists to confirm a station's location without ever lifting a shovel, saving years of fruitless digging. Once these points are identified, the next tool comes into play: satellite imagery. High-resolution photos from space can reveal crop marks, a phenomenon where plants grow differently over buried ruins. Stone foundations just below the surface hold less water, causing the crops above them to be stunted and yellow, while the filled-in ditches of old fortifications hold more moisture, creating lines of darker, lusher green. From space, these patterns form the clear outlines of a mansio's walls, a ghostly blueprint drawn by the very plants that grow there. The final piece of the puzzle is Geographic Information Systems, or GIS. This is the digital brain that assembles the clues. Imagine a map of the Roman Empire on a computer screen. An archaeologist can now drop every piece of evidence onto this map: the LIDAR discovered road segments, the satellite-identified ruins, the known locations from the Putinga table, and the old-fashioned excavation reports. The GIS software then analyzes all this data together. It can calculate the most efficient path between two confirmed stations, predicting where a lost road should logically run. It can test the 6 to 8 mile spacing rule, highlighting areas where a mutatio is likely missing and waiting to be found. This is not just a static map. It is a dynamic, interactive model of the entire system. With a click, you can trace a courier's probable route from Alexandria to Rome, seeing not only the path but every mansio and mutatio he would have used, the total distance, and the estimated travel time. This digital reconstruction is more than a scholarly exercise. It is a way of running experiments on the ancient world. We can ask the model what happens if a key bridge goes out, and see how the network reroutes, or how a message speed is affected. We are no longer just reading about the Cursus Publicus. We are flying over its restored landscape, watching the pulses of information travel along its veins, finally understanding the physical machine that made an empire think and act as one. To truly grasp this system in motion, we can follow a single artery from the empire's heart to its farthest fingertip, the Via Augusta. This was the great road of Roman Spain, a colossal extension of the Via Appia that began at the gates of Rome itself and did not end until it reached the port of Gades, modern-day Cadiz, at the very edge of the known world. A courier departing the capital would first thunder down the Italian peninsula, his journey a blur of familiar way stations. After crossing the sea to the eastern coast of Spain, the true Via Augusta began, a relentless line stretching over 900 miles. It carved through the lush coastal plains of Tarocco, climbed the rugged hills around Valencia, and skirted the southern deserts before finally reaching the Atlantic. We can trace his path on a modern map. a line of ghostly determination overlaid on the vibrant geography of modern Spain. The rhythm of his travel was dictated by the station's archaeology has confirmed. A mutatio near the city of Tarocco, a mansio outside of Carthago Nova, another change station by the Guadalquivir River. Plotting these known points reveals the machine's precision. Each stop a calculated step in a giant's stride. With this reconstructed route, we can calculate the travel time with startling accuracy. A message from Rome to Cadiz, a distance of roughly 1,500 total miles, would have been an impossible journey for a single rider. But for the relay, it was a predictable 25 to 30-day operation. This was the network's power, transforming a trek of epic, mythical proportions into a manageable, almost routine, administrative task. The Via Augusta was a microcosm of the entire empire. Along its length travelled not only military dispatches from the legions in the north, but also the tax silver from Spanish mines, the travel orders for officials governing the province, and the commercial reports from merchants in the southern ports. Every type of cargo that sustained Rome moved along this single road, its successful delivery a testament to the relentless, humming efficiency of the stations that dotted its path. To ride the Via Augusta from end to end was to experience the Roman Empire in its essence, a continuous thread of controlled movement, stitching a diverse landscape into a single, manageable domain. The straight line of the Via Augusta was a master plan, but the true secrets of the network are often found where that plan breaks down. It is in the unexpected curve of a road, or the sudden appearance of a station far from any known route, that the map is rewritten. One such discovery came from the damp soil of northern Britain, near the Roman fort of Vindolanda. Here, archaeologists excavating the periphery of the site unearthed the foundations of a sprawling complex far larger than a typical mutatio. The layout was unmistakable. A large central courtyard surrounded by multiple buildings, including a substantial bathhouse and what appeared to be barracks for a small garrison. This was not just a horse-changing post. It was a full-scale mansio. Its location was the real shock. Historical models had long assumed the primary courier route in this region ran along a different, more direct road. The existence of this large, fortified inn meant a major branch of the Cursus Publicus snaked through here, a detour that served a strategic purpose. This mansio was positioned to support not just messengers, but the constant traffic of officials and supplies moving between several key forts in the northern defensive network. Its discovery forced a complete redrawing of the local map, revealing a web of communication in the frontier zone that was far denser and more complex than anyone had suspected. The soil gave up more than just stones. Among the ruins, researchers found discarded writing tablets, the thin slivers of wood on which officers scribbled their reports. One fragment, carbonized and preserved by a lucky fire, contained a partial requisition for fodder, explicitly mentioning the imperial post. It was a tiny piece of bureaucratic proof, confirming the building's function and placing it firmly within the living, breathing system of the Cursus Publicus. This single find in Britain demonstrated that the network was not a static, one-size-fits-all grid, but a dynamic, adaptable organism that grew and shifted to meet the empire's evolving needs. Half a continent away, along the Danube River, a farmer's plough struck metal, unearthing a discovery that would illuminate the system's inner security. The object was a small, sealed bronze diploma, and then another and another. It was a hoard, a collection of these precious imperial passports, deliberately hidden and never recovered. Each one was a snapshot of a specific moment and a specific mission. One diploma granted passage to a military tribune named Lucius Valerius, assigned to inspect the legionary fortresses along the river. Another authorized a team of imperial slaves to transport official correspondence from the provincial capital. The information on these tablets was a treasure trove. It confirmed the names of officials whose existence was only guessed at from other records. More importantly, the location of the hoard itself was a mystery. Why were they buried here, far from any major administrative center? The leading theory suggests a moment of extreme crisis, perhaps during a barbarian raid in the late 3rd century. A local official responsible for these valuable documents may have buried them to prevent their capture and misuse, hoping to return when the danger passed, a return that never happened. This single cache of diplomata did more than just confirm names. It revealed the system's profound vulnerability. It provided physical, tangible evidence of the panic that could seize the network's periphery. The moment when the bronze key to the Empire's security had to be hidden in the dirt. A silent testament to the fear that ultimately unraveled the threads of communication. The relentless efficiency of the Courier Network cast a long shadow across the provinces, a shadow paid for by the sweat and grain of ordinary people. This burden was known as the Angariae, a compulsory service that fell like a hammer on those living near the imperial roads. A community did not simply watch the couriers pass by. It was legally obligated to fuel their journey. A government edict could arrive at any moment, demanding your best horses, your sturdiest wagons, or vast quantities of barley and hay from your harvest. For a local farmer, this was a devastating blow. Your finest plough horse, the very animal your family's survival depended on, could be taken for the imperial post. The grain you had stored to last through the winter might be requisitioned to feed the state's animals, leaving you facing hunger. There was no appeal, no market price paid. This was a duty, a munus, extracted by the overwhelming power of the state. The system designed to create unity was, at the local level, a source of deep-seated resentment and financial ruin. The potential for abuse was woven into the very fabric of the Angariae. A corrupt official could easily demand twice the required number of horses, selling the extras for personal profit. A local magistrate, tasked with fulfilling the quota, might extort extra supplies from his neighbors, pocketing the difference and leaving the community even poorer. If you complained, you risked punishment for failing to meet your obligation to Rome. The constant sight of the imperial couriers changing horses was not a symbol of pride, but a daily reminder of an oppressive, unyielding system that siphoned away local wealth to serve a distant capital. The marvel of a message traveling 50 miles in a day was built on the backs of countless anonymous individuals who lost their livestock, their food, and their security. This is the dark, unbalanced legacy of the Cursus Publicus, a system of brilliant connection that simultaneously bred the very friction and injustice that would, over centuries, help pull the empire apart from within. That ghost of a Roman road, paved with laser light, did not vanish with the last emperor. The blueprint for a connected world, first etched by the Cursus Publicus, was a template that would be rediscovered and reinvented again and again. Centuries after Rome's fall, another empire of immense scale arose on the steppes of Asia, and it built a system that was a direct echo of the Roman relay. The Mongol Empire, under leaders like Genghis Khan, established the Am. This was a network of way stations strikingly similar to the mutations and mansions, spaced a day's ride apart across thousands of miles. Fresh horses, food, and lodgings awaited the Mongol couriers, who carried decrees and intelligence across an empire even larger than Rome's. These riders could achieve speeds that would have impressed a Roman official, proving that the principle of the relay was timeless. Then leap forward to the American frontier. In the 1860s, the short-lived but legendary Pony Express was born from the same desperate need for speed. Its riders, like their ancient counterparts, changed horses at relay stations spaced roughly 10 miles apart, carrying mail from Missouri to California in just 10 days. They faced the same elemental dangers, the same physical exhaustion, and the same understanding that a message was more important than the messenger. The Pony Express was the Cursus Publicus, reborn on the prairie. A fleeting but powerful reminder that to conquer distance, you must break a journey into a sprint. This ancient logic is the very foundation of our modern world. Every national postal service, with its sorting hubs and mail trucks, operates on the same relay principle. A letter does not travel from your hometown to a distant city in a single vehicle. It moves from your local post office to a regional sorting center, then onto a long-haul truck or plane, and finally through another local office for delivery. It is the reader carriage system scaled to a global level, but the most profound legacy is hidden in the digital realm. The Internet itself functions on this ancient blueprint. When you send an email or load a web page, your data is broken into small packets. These packets do not travel directly from your computer to the destination. They hop from one router to the next, each router acting as a digital mutatio, reading the packet's address and forwarding it along the most efficient path toward its final goal. A single email might have its packets take 3 different routes across the world before reassembling in an instant. This is the Roman relay reimagined for the information age, a system where the horses are photons and the diplomas are encrypted digital certificates. The Cursus Publicus was not merely a mail service. It was the first true internet, a physical prototype for every network that followed. Its fundamental architecture, the logic of breaking a long journey into managed hops, is woven into the very fabric of how humanity connects. A 2,000-year-old idea that still carries our words at the speed of light. Hollywood loves the lone hero, a single rider galloping across deserts and mountains to deliver a crucial message. This cinematic image is powerful, but it is a complete fiction when applied to the Roman Courier Network. The reality was far more brilliant and complex. No single rider ever carried a message from Rome to Britain or from Egypt to Gaul. Such a journey would have killed both the man and his horse, reducing the empire's vital communications to a slow, tragic crawl. The true system was a masterpiece of decentralization, a relay where the message was the only constant, passed like a baton between a succession of fresh riders. This was not a story of individual endurance, but of flawless institutional coordination. There was no place for a solitary hero in the Cursus Publicus, only for anonymous, interchangeable cogs in a perfectly calibrated machine. Another popular myth is the idea of the courier dramatically bursting into the Senate or the emperor's chambers, gasping out his news before collapsing. In truth, he would never have gotten that far. His journey ended at a bureaucratic hub, an administrative office where his sealed scroll was logged by a clerk and passed into the vast government apparatus. The drama was in the system's silent, relentless efficiency, not in a single, breathless arrival. These films also rarely show the immense, costly infrastructure humming in the background, the thousands of way stations, the tens of thousands of horses, and the crushing burden it placed on local communities. The glamorous rider on screen is not hauling fodder or repairing a carriage axle. Yet that unglamorous labor was the true foundation of his speed. The real story is not one of a man against the wilderness, but of an empire's collective effort to conquer distance itself. By believing the myth of the lone rider, we miss the entire point of Rome's achievement. The genius was not in the stamina of one man, but in the creation of a system that made such stamina completely unnecessary. The sound was a rhythmic thunder, a rapid-fire clatter of iron-shod hooves striking paved stone that echoed between the hillsides and sent birds scattering from the trees. This was the relentless soundtrack of the Cursus Publicus, a noise that announced the empire's business long before the rider came into view. For a farmer working a field near the road, that sound was a signal. It meant stepping aside, pulling your ox cart to the very edge, and watching a blur of motion and purpose streak past. The air left in the courier's wake would swirl with dust and the sharp, sweaty smell of a lathered horse. His arrival at a mutatio was not a gentle affair. It was a sudden explosion of controlled chaos. The courier would slide from his heaving mount, his own tunic soaked through with sweat, his legs stiff and aching from hours in the saddle. The stable hands, drilled for this moment, moved with practiced speed. One would grab the bridle of the spent horse, already leading it away to be cooled down and cared for, while another brought forward a fresh, prancing animal, its coat gleaming and energy barely contained. The transfer of the saddlebags, those sealed leather pouches holding the empire's secrets, took only seconds. There was no conversation beyond gasped orders and confirmations. Then a grunt of effort as the new rider swung up, a sharp cry, and the thunder would begin again, fading down the road as quickly as it had arrived. Inside the larger mansio, the atmosphere was different, a strange mix of military routine and exhausted quiet. The air was thick with the smells of a stable, wood smoke from the bathhouse, and the simple aroma of stew cooking in a large pot. Here, a courier might have a few precious hours to become human again. He could sink into the warm waters of the bath, the heat seeping into his battered muscles. He would eat his meal, perhaps sharing a silent table with other riders coming from opposite directions, all bound by the same unspoken understanding of their duty. Sleep was a desperate, heavy commodity, snatched in a shared dormitory before a pre-dawn shake on the shoulder sent him back out into the cold to begin the cycle once more. This was not a life of glory, but of profound physical sacrifice. His world was reduced to the ache in his back, the chafing of his clothes, the constant jolt of the road, and the singular focus on the next station, and the next, and the next, until his part of the relay was done. This ghost of a system is no longer confined to academic papers or static maps. You can now walk these roads yourself from your own home, thanks to a new wave of digital humanities projects that are breathing interactive life into the Cursus Publicus. Imagine opening a web browser and calling up a map of the Roman Empire, but this one is alive. With a click, you can turn on a layer that shows every confirmed mutatio as a small, glowing dot, creating a constellation of pit stops across Europe. Another click overlays the larger mansions, and suddenly the skeletal framework of the entire network materializes before your eyes. The true power of these tools lies in their ability to simulate the ancient experience. A search bar lets you input a journey, from Londinium to Rome, for instance. The map instantly highlights the most probable route, drawing a bright line along the known roads. But it goes further, calculating the travel time based on the relay system's known speeds. The result appears on screen, a precise estimate of 24 days, a number that transforms the vast, abstract empire into a measurable, traversable space. You can toggle between a simple map view and a satellite overlay, tracing the courier's path over the actual modern landscape, seeing the mountains he climbed and the rivers he crossed. These platforms often include a database linked to each point on the map. Clicking on a mansio in Gaul might pull up its archaeological report, fragments of pottery found there, or a reference to it in a surviving text. This is more than a map. It is a time machine that layers 2,000 years of history into a single, explorable interface. It allows anyone to become a digital cartographer, testing theories and asking questions that would have taken scholars years to answer. What happens to the travel time if you avoid a mountain pass? The recalculated route shows you instantly. How did the network evolve over 3 centuries? A timeline slider lets you watch the web of connections expand, and then, tragically, begin to contract and fade. This interactive access demystifies the ancient world, replacing dusty charts with a dynamic model you can touch, manipulate, and truly understand. The invisible machine that held an empire together is now visible. Its every gear and pulley laid bare for exploration. For all the lines we have drawn and the stations we have mapped, the ghost of the Cursus Publicus still keeps some of its most vital secrets. The grand map of the empire remains dotted with frustrating blank spaces, corridors of silence where the Roman roads seem to vanish into the mist. One of the most enduring puzzles winds through the heart of the Alps. We know the Romans built roads across these mountains, and we have found their endpoints in the valleys below. But tracing the precise path, a courier would have taken through a high, treacherous pass like the Great St. Bernard is like trying to follow a ghost. Landslides over centuries have obliterated the original roadbeds, and later medieval routes often built directly on top of the Roman foundations, burying the evidence forever. Did the couriers follow a single, well-defined path? Or were there multiple, seasonal routes that shifted with the snowpack? The answer would tell us not just about travel, but about the rhythm of communication between Italy and the northern provinces, and whether the empire's pulse slowed to a crawl during the long winter months. Another profound mystery lies not on land, but at sea. The Mediterranean was a Roman lake, a vital highway for trade and the navy. It is inconceivable that urgent messages were not flown across the water. But how? Did the Cursus Publicus extend its reach to include fast galleys waiting in keyports, ready to race a sealed pouch to Alexandria or Carthage? Or did imperial couriers simply commandeer the fastest available merchant ship, flashing their diploma to supersede all other cargo? We have almost no physical evidence for dedicated postal ships, and the historical records are silent on the specifics of maritime logistics. This gap in our knowledge leaves a huge part of the communication network in the dark. A message from Rome to Egypt would logically go by sea for much of the journey, yet we can only guess at its speed, its security, and the infrastructure that made it possible. Perhaps the most tantalizing question of all concerns the messages themselves. We know the couriers carried sealed scrolls, but what was inside? How did a Roman general encrypt a sensitive military plan to ensure that even if his messenger was captured, the enemy could not read it? There are hints of simple substitution ciphers, where letters are shifted or replaced, used by figures like Julius Caesar. But was there a standardized imperial code, a method so secret that its key was known only to governors and the emperor? No such codebook has ever been found. The security of the entire empire rested on the assumption that a captured dispatch would be an unreadable block of text. But we have no proof of how, or how well, this was actually achieved. The silence of the sources on this point is deafening. It suggests a level of operational secrecy so effective that it died with the last Roman official who understood its rules. These unanswered questions are more than just academic exercises. They are the missing pieces in our understanding of how the empire truly operated at its peak. Solving the Alpine route mystery would reveal the empire's resilience in the face of nature's fury. Uncovering the sea routes would show us a network far more agile and maritime than our current land-based maps suggest. And finding even a fragment of an imperial cipher would unlock the final layer of the system, letting us hear the whispers that were meant only for the most powerful ears in the ancient world. The map is largely drawn, but its most fascinating details are still hidden in the silence between the lines. The ghost of the Courier Network is no longer a phantom. It is a map, meticulously redrawn by lasers and satellites, revealing a system of staggering sophistication. This was the world's first state-sponsored information superhighway, a physical internet built not with fiber optics, but with stone and sweat. Every rediscovered road segment and every digitally pinpointed way station proves the Roman Empire was not just a collection of conquered lands, but a single interconnected organism. The sheer scale we can now measure is breathtaking. A web of managed movements spanning continents, all dedicated to the simple, profound act of delivering a message. For centuries, we understood their ambition through their monuments and laws, but only now are we grasping the true genius of their connection. The Cursus Publicus was the ultimate tool of integration, a machine designed to make a vast and diverse empire think and act as one. Its legacy is not just in the ruins we walk past, but in the very blueprint of our modern connected world. The next time you send an instant message or track a package moving across the country in real time, remember the rhythm of hooves on a paved Roman road. The technology has changed beyond recognition, but the fundamental idea remains: the relentless human drive to conquer distance and bridge the silence between us. So much of their world is gone, but the paths they carved still whisper. What words, what orders, what desperate pleas for help flew along those routes, carried by riders whose names are lost to history, yet whose journeys shaped the world we live in today.